Afternoon, guys. Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School. I've got a trap set up over here that I want to walk you through today that I've been experimenting with before our trapping class to make sure it wasn't too complicated to teach in our primitive trapping methods class coming up here next month. This trap, the actual trap itself or the killing mechanism of this trap was shown to me at about 2009 time frame by Paul Campbell, who is now deceased. So it's an honor for me to be able to pass this trap on to someone else. My buddy Steve Davis, we shot a video at an event out in California of him teaching this trap or demonstrating this trap that we had learned from Paul Campbell. But that video is very fuzzy. It's a shaky video because it's a guy, you know, with an older cell phone taking the video. So it's not real clean, it's not real clear. And it's called Caveman Conibear. So what I thought I would do is I would shoot a video today reintroducing the Caveman Conibear so that you might get a better look at how it's constructed and how it works. Stay with me. What I want to show you guys today is a very simple body grip style trap that's not difficult to manufacture, that will be capable of killing raccoon and possum sized animals fairly easily. You're going to need to construct the scissoring device for this trap, and it's very simple. You lash two sticks together so that they create a V, and at the top of those sticks you're going to put one lashing that's a simple loop at the top and another lashing that has a line going through it so that that loop can spread out and be pulled together within the trap. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. The next thing you need to create is the trap housing. What's going to house that scissor mechanism. And basically all we've done here is driven two stakes into the ground that were the distance apart here and here that our scissor opens. And then we have lashed a stick to both sides to make a travel channel for the V to operate. On the back side, we've put a triggering mechanism. Now you can use lots of mechanisms for triggers and engines with this simple setup of a scissor trap. This is one that I prefer. We have not fenced or guarded this trap in any way, and we haven't camouflaged it yet at all. So this is just a simple mechanics on how to set it up. One thing that's important with this stick in the back, you can see that it has a 90-degree edge on three sides. It's flat here, it's flat on the bottom side, and it's flat on the back side. It's just rounded on one side. The reason for that is you can use a push or a pull type trigger with this trap. A push trigger would be set up closer to the housing of the trap so that the animal would push against it to get the bait beyond it and set off the trigger. A pull type trigger is used for animals like raccoons and possums that eat with their hands. And you want a pull type trigger very similar to the triggers that are used in modern day coon cuffs, because that animal is going to reach into this trap with his hands and he's going to try to pull that bait. Now, you've got to have enough space in here between the housing and the trigger itself back there that the animal is going to get most of his body within this trigger, within this trap housing, before he decides to start grabbing that bait. So you don't want this trigger close enough here that he can just reach his hands through the trap and start pulling the thing. You want him to go all the way in and then start working at whatever you've got for bait in there. The good thing about possum and coon is they eat just about anything. So anything you can put on that trap trigger, which we'll talk about in a minute, they're probably going to eat it. Okay, again, we have a scissoring device here that opens and closes. Just like this. When the line is pulled taut, it closes this scissor. And that's what's going to trap the animal between these two scissors and underneath of these two rungs, because this will sit inside here like that when we set it up. So we've got to have enough line here to attach to our trigger. Our trigger in this case is just a long stake that's got a notch cut in it to sit on our trigger bar. It's pointed on the end to shove a frog or a piece of meat up on, or whatever we want to, a piece of vegetable, whatever we've got. Corn would work fine. And then a notch at the top to tie it off. And then it goes up to our trap engine. And trap engines are something that's very important to understand with traps like this, because I see a lot of people teaching these type traps with a spring pole. A spring pole is not going to be strong enough to crush that animal and suffocate him. you need dead falling weight. In this case, I've got about a 9-foot, 3-inch hardwood live tree that I've cut. That when you're pulling on one end of the fulcrum, you've got probably 40 pounds dropping on the other end to pull that animal up into the trap. And we'll demonstrate that in a minute. And all I've done is I found a tree with a Y in it or a fork in it, where there's 2 trees growing up out of one stump. I've lashed mule tape around it, put my fulcrum over the top and attached my trap string to the fulcrum. And then I've actually attached the fulcrum to that wrap as well so that it can't move. What you want is, when this animal's trapped in here, you want the string to be tight, the fulcrum to be dropped. If you can get the fulcrum to be suspended off the ground when the trap is set, that's even better. If you can't, as long as it's dead tight and there's no slack and no bounce, he's not going to get out of there. So let's talk about setting this trap. Okay, to set this trap, we need to make sure that our scissor is in the right position to open. And then we need to draw our fulcrum down toward us, just like this, giving slack to the trigger and slack to the V as well. And then we open the V up. We can do this after the fact. The important thing now is to get this trigger mechanism set and baited. So we need to get it on this triggering bar right here in place. Now we can fool with all this stuff. We can get this opened up the way we want to and down and get things out of the way. What's going to happen here is, when this goes off, it's going to draw this string up, which is going to close this scissor and draw the animal. Not only both sides of the animal are going to be crushed or squeezed, for lack of a better word. It's probably not going to crush him, but it's going to squeeze him very tightly. It's also going to draw him up into these crossbars at the same time. And what that's going to do is suffocate the animal, because as he breathes out, he won't be able to breathe in as deep the next time. Very similar to a dead falling type trap. You can set this trigger up so that it's a push trigger or a pull trigger, like I said, but for this application, a pull trigger is going to be better, because that's how those type animals eat. You've got to make sure that you've got enough room here, that your scissor's wide enough that the animal's going to be apt to crawl through there. And if we fence this off here and this off here and only leave that opening, he's going to go in there. No question about that. Now let me show you how this trap springs and how it works and how it locks the animal in there with a dummy possum. So stay with me. Comes into the trap, and here's our little fake possum, and he gets 2 feet in there. He's over the top and he's working the set, and now he's got his body in there. He's got enough room in there to get his hands to the bait and try to pull it to his mouth, and he'll go in there. Don't worry about that. And we're going to fence this off or cover this cubby up with something that will make it more appealing to him, so he can't come in from the sides. He can only come into it from the front side. And once he gets into this portion of it and starts working this trigger with his hands, and it goes off, it will immediately lock him in, pulling his body up, creating a scissor. And this thing is dead tight. There's no slack in that thing whatsoever, and it's tied to the fulcrum device at the top so that it can't move. And that dude is surely going to suffocate in that trap, because there's no getting away from it. You're not getting out of that. And that is a killing type trap for raccoon and possum. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this really quick presentation of this scissor type trap. It's a very effective trap. It's a little complicated and time consuming to build. Probably a half an hour to build one trap. What you can do is you can make some of these components ahead of time. The scissoring devices, the triggers, things like that can be made ahead of time, and then you can construct the final components on site if you are in a position where you have to trap primitively. Remember that state laws do not permit primitive trapping in lots and lots of states, so make sure that you are cognizant of that and pay attention to that before you just go out and set primitive traps all over state land. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters and the Pathfinder School, and I appreciate your views. I thank you for your support. I appreciate everything you do for our school, for our family, and for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends, and I'll be back with another video as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.